Hi guys, welcome back. Today I am going to paint this painting of the Grim Reaper, and I figured today we can just talk a little bit about the subject matter that I'm painting, some of the symbolism, the things that I think about when I'm working on concepts for paintings, and basically just let's just chat while I work on a painting, and maybe you guys can pull up some of your own artwork that you want to work on, and we can just hang out and work on some artwork. But yeah, I have been wanting to do a Grim Reaper type painting for a really long time now. And the more that I thought about it as time went on, the more I wanted to do multiple versions of this character, because there are so many different ways that I would love to be able to show that same character, different aspects that I'd like to pull from and really feature in different types of paintings. So this is one of my takes on this kind of figure, this character, and I really enjoyed sitting down and thinking about what were elements that I really definitely wanted in this piece, and how did I want the symbolism to come through, and what kind of details I wanted to put into this piece so that it would tell a little bit more of the emotional story that I wanted to tell through this piece. So a couple months ago, I did a piece that did have the Grim Reaper in it, which was titled "See You Later," and that was the Patreon postcard from a couple months back. And in that one, I did more of a stereotypical, or the traditional way of representing the Grim Reaper, and that's with the skeletal figure, and he's cloaked in a black cloak. So for this one, again, I wanted it to be a departure of that. I want to show different variations of what could be the same concept and the same purpose that the character has, but then pick out different details that I can pull from it. So for this one, I decided that I wanted to do a female figure who was by most accounts looking alive, but then I wanted to look for details that I could show that would represent her being more linked to the other side, to being dead. But I'll talk more about the character design and the decisions that I made for her when I'm actually painting her. But for the background, when I thought about working on this piece, I immediately had this concept in mind of how I wanted the composition to work with the character in the background, and the background being kind of this portal, or this this hole, I guess, that took you from one plane to another. So I wanted this very circular shape that would create almost a halo around the Grim Reaper character that would really help focus the eye down on her. But I also wanted there to be meaning behind that, and representation of this passage from one side to the other. And I wanted it to feel actually very positive and open. I want this piece to feel more like a piece that represents transition from one point or place in life to another. And when we transition from something, oftentimes we have to leave things behind, or we change so that we don't have everything that we used to have. And yeah, I wanted to show that where those changes can be positive, and they can be really an enlightening experience. So I wanted the background, this transitioning element to the piece, to be bright and colorful and warm. So ultimately I chose to use very warm colors, this blend, and I centered that portal, or the hole in the middle, as more of a yellow color, and then the yellow would fade into more orange, and then red, and then my quinacridone violet. And then eventually I go back in and add a little bit of this like splotchy dark, it's actually neutral gray, I think, from M-Gram. But anyways, yes, I go in and add some darkness around the edges, but that way that helps the eye to really just focus in on that center, that transitionary place in the middle of this piece, where it's the brightest and the lightest, and that gradation of the colors helps to lead the eye as well. At least I hope it does. So the character design, I loved thinking through this. This was really fun. It's probably one of my favorite things to really think about, is how can I bring a character to life. So no sort of pun intended, but for her, I I decided to give her blue skin so that she could feel a little bit more unearthly and more dead, like she's from the other side. And I also knew that I really wanted it to be a very simplified color palette so that she could have a lot of contrast with the background. So I chose to only use two colors for the character, the black and the blue for her skin. And then of course there's variations within the blue so that there's more interest to it. But yeah, I love how that turned out, where it does have a lot of contrast and she stands out a lot from the background because she is built up from contrasting, where her skin is cool and the background is very warm. And then it also has value contrast, where that center is in the background, that center circle is really very white and light, and she has this dark dress and more gray hair. It helps her to really stand out from the background that has a lot of lines and details that are happening around her. I love designing the dress for this piece. It was probably my favorite part to draw and to figure out. I tried to look up as many references as I could for more distressed dresses or this kind of texture in fabric, and it was really difficult to find references that looked like what I had in my head. So there was a lot of me finding things that were kind of close and then really just making it up as I worked on it, which was fun. It was very opening to be able to just play around with the shapes that I wanted. And eventually I go in and add more of these like little broken off pieces from her dress that are swirling around her. And I really like that detail. I wish that I had thought of it earlier so that I could incorporate larger shapes that were breaking off and almost like they were tearing away from her dress. But yeah, it was really fun to sketch this one out and to think through what kind of shape I wanted her dress to have, so that it really had more of this almost decaying kind of feel to it, like it itself was aging and falling apart. And normally I love looking for different colors that I can use for shadows or different areas for highlights that I can use different colors for. It just really brings out the life of watercolors, and one of the best features of watercolors is that you can layer and glaze, and then you create these really dynamic washes where different colors interact. But sometimes it's really fun to be able to just do a shape that is painted with a single pigment, like I did with her hair and with her dress, where it really was just built up with one. It was actually a mixture, but it was one paint mixture where I could go in and create deeper shadows all from that same spot, that same paint that I mixed up. It was fun because I could just focus on just the shadows, and there were less components to think about and juggle, and I enjoyed that. It was fun to be able to just have a more simplified approach to certain shapes like that, like the hair, like her dress, when normally there are a lot more considerations that I take. But I felt like that was at least somewhat suited for this piece, for this character, where she could have a very, again, simplified, clean color palette because of how I wanted her to look. So I decided to go ahead and roll with that. And the mixture that I used to get this black is actually Payne's Gray and Ivory Black from Mgram. I find that the actual neutral, I think it's neutral tint is what it's called from Mgram, is actually very purple toned. So it's great for a lot of purposes, but it for me is not a true neutral paint. So I wanted it to be relatively neutral. So I actually did mix those two together. One is a little bit warmer, one is obviously cooler. The Payne's Gray is a very cool gray black kind of a color. And yeah, I think that it turned out to be a very nice mixture. I really liked how they interact with each other. And when you look at the original piece, you can see a little bit of granulation. It's very subtle, but I love that. I love when there's this subtle separation of the pigments. So when you can see an original watercolor in person, it has just a little bit more sparkle and life to it than if you're looking at it, say, as a picture of it somewhere or a print of it. I don't know. I love those little details that remain with the original. I know that I do want to do at least one more Grim Reaper painting. I'm not sure exactly what details I want there to be to distinguish it from this one and that smaller piece that I had done earlier. I think probably maybe a marriage a little bit between the two of how the Grim Reaper character is displayed, where maybe it can be a little bit in between of this skeletal character and more of a character that looks flesh and blood, basically. So I don't know. I would love to think about it more and figure out some different elements that I could show to really tell a new story, a new take, and a new spin on that character, and maybe find ways to really tell a different personal story for that character. And I do have this painting available as a print. She's available in an 8x10 or the 11x14. And that link is down in the description. It'll take you over to my shop. I really love how this one turned out. I loved working on it. I love the character. It was something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, so it was fun to finally make it a reality. But as always, I do want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. I cannot thank you enough for the support that you show me over there. You guys help me to be able to do this every single day. And yeah, I love you guys. You guys are amazing. But that's it for today. So I'll be back next time with some more art. And I'll see you guys then.